Good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing on this wonderful Monday afternoon, evening, night, depending where you're at? We got people all over the country, so different time zones. So welcome, welcome, welcome to our show. Tonight we have Dr. Miscovich and Dr. Akiona again to share us with us some insights. I think since they stopped the daily reporting of COVID cases, hospitalizations, and deaths, since we only find out on Wednesdays, there's very little information being processed. Very little information. It's very hard for us to know where we're at. You saw if you're on my page, you saw the post about the cruise ships that made the round trip from California to Hawaii and back, and they had you know hundreds, I don't know, 140 whatever it was, COVID positive passengers. Now, remember, now these are 100% vaccinated people that are tested pre, during, and post. So that's a lot of people that slip through the cracks because of the testing, right? Because incubation periods differ. We'll talk about that tonight with the doctors. But again, we're not getting the information. We all got to wait till Wednesday. We don't know where we're at. We know that our positivity rates are quite high, which means there is still a lot of transmission going on in our communities, and there's definitely a whole lot of cases that are not being reported because of home tests, because people are just not testing. A lot of testing sites have been removed. Kauai, thank goodness, our county, our mayor, and our team has kept our convention hall free testing open Mondays through Fridays. I think from 8:30 to 3:30 or something like that. And it's the PCRs. So our Kauai people have the ability to get down there and get a free test. So, but bottom line is a lot of people are not testing. A lot of people are getting sniffles. They're getting the minor symptoms, and they're just not testing, and they're going on with their lives, and that's really why the transmission rates are rising. Not to mention the fact that we have no barrier now for travel at the airports. So we can expect, and we've been hearing this for a long time from all of our experts that come on the show. We've been hearing about the expectation that numbers will rise, surges will happen with our existing variants and future variants. So, George is saying HIPAM modeling report out today reiterates much of what has been said and understood by the village to date. Yes, I saw that, George. I saw the modeling, and they're kind of interesting how they go. They go, I think, current trend, optimistic view, and pessimistic view. The bottom line is this, folks. There's a lot of virus floating around, and I know it's kind of easy to ignore it because the people getting sick are typically mild illness. Hey, pops, my pops is on. We celebrated his birthday last night at my brother's house, small gathering. We had a good time, and he's heading back home on Wednesday to Seattle. That's gonna be rough seeing him leave, but we definitely had a great time while he was here, enjoying some food. We'll have our Aloha Oi dinner tomorrow night at my brother's house, and it should be fun. So hope you enjoy the show, Dad. So yeah, there's a lot of virus. There's a lot of transmission, and again, very low or underreported cases. What the estimate between probably three, four, maybe five, even six times more than what's being reported. And remember now, right now, based on last week's count, we're well over 200 cases a day in the state, and it's creeping up, right? And people just not being aware, probably because it's not being stated every day like it used to be, right? We could compare the daily rate, so you could actually see the numbers rising. So yeah, it's something that we gotta take into account every single day. We gotta make sure we understand that and share that with our loved ones so we can be safe. We can be safe. Anyway, I did want to shout out. I know a lot of you watched the video. I went live yesterday at the airport welcoming Lena Allah, Paval Jardine, with her halal kale mokihana o lena ala. Many of you know, went to the Merry Monarch. This was their 10th anniversary as a halal, and on their 10th anniversary, they swept. They won the Kahiko, they won the Awana, they won the overall Wahine, and they also won the overall. So they came home the grand champions. Uh, I went down to welcome them back and decided why not do a Facebook Live, and I know a lot of you saw the video. If you haven't, go check it out. It's on my page, and there's several videos floating around. But I did have a chance to interview some of the dancers as well as Kumu Lena Ala. I got to interview her, and that was quite cool for me. She's the star of the show. It was her vision. It's her. It's the way she teaches and trains. She doesn't just teach the hula. She teaches the history. She teaches the purpose. That is why they did so well. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a hula guy, not a melee guy. I just watch, and I tell you, they all were so good. If you didn't watch the actual competition, all of the halal did extremely well. And if you watch it, you saw the difference in the overall was like 1 point between first, second, and third. It was crazy, and it really could have gone either way. I knew in my heart watching that they were going to win, although they were all fantastic. So I'm just happy and tickled and shed a few tears, happy tears, when we saw them number one win, and then we were able to see them come through the baggage claim. Oh, wait, hold on. Misco is texting me. I'm ready to log on. Come on in. I bet he doesn't have the link. Dr. Akiona is running a few minutes late because it's raining over there on the Big Island, so she's driving carefully. But anyway, yeah. So see them come through the baggage claim doors, and they immediately formed up and did the same oli. If you watch the oli that they did in front of the judges, they did that in the baggage claim. It was phenomenal. It was. I mean, you feel it. It's so real. It's so amazing. I'm glad I did the live, because hopefully you could except for smelling the aroma of all the flowers, all the lei that was there. The smell was just it's so hard to explain. But being able to see them come in and listening to some of them, I think if you saw the video, you saw the part where one of the dancers was just hugging her mom, and it was just crying, and she was just crying, so happy, number one, to be home, and number two, to be the winners. So yeah, go ahead and watch it if you haven't. Share it. I think it had about 7,600 views earlier today, and I think it's just, especially if you're from here on Kauai, our it's our neighbor. She's our sister, and all of those Wahine are our sisters. And to see them, yes, Mila, breathtaking that's the word, man. I was just, wow. It was just special, and I cannot wait for next year when they return to defend the championship. It's so difficult. It's so difficult. The competition is so tough, but they were able to do it. And congratulations out. And by the way, she will be on our show on Friday. Feel Good Friday will be Kumu Lena Ala Paval Jardine. She'll be joining us on Friday night, so mark your calendars. But for tonight, we got Dr. Miscovich. Dr. Akiona will be on in a little bit. She's running late because of the rain, the weather on the Big Island. So how you feeling, Dr. Miscovich?
No problems. It's Aloha Monday, another COVID Monday with COVID on cruise ships, COVID everywhere we turn around. But no, hey, I'm I'm doing good. I can't complain.
Yeah, I posted that article that came out late this afternoon regarding the cruise ships. That is 2 week old data, which is another frustration, I think, Doc, that I continue to have is the fact that we cannot get the information out soon enough. Um, that ship landed in California after the round trip to Hawaii and back on the 11th, which is exactly 2 weeks ago. And only today we find out about it. Now, the question is, how many of those passengers were allowed? We talked about before you came on, Doc. These passengers they have to be all vaccinated. Number one, they all have to be vaccinated, and they all have to be tested. So obviously, incubation periods of this virus is different with everyone, right? So they may have tested negative. However, the virus is still brewing in their system. And then they get on the ship. Supposedly everyone's virus free. Well, they're virus free at the time they took the test. But how many of them are actually carrying the virus? And after a day or two or three, they start shedding the virus and spreading the virus. And that's exactly what happened on the ship. And how many of those passengers that depart with a negative test will develop the virus a day or two or three after they leave the ship, feeling like they're okay because they took a test and they tested negative?
Well, Mel, you're exactly right. And so there are few guarantees in the world that doctors will give you, but I will guarantee you the numbers are significantly higher than that. There's no doubt about it. Because one of the first things I would wonder is, did they do a broad testing of the entire ship once they had positives? Because, bottom line is, I have a feeling that, and I feel bad for the cruise industry. They have gotten hammered during COVID, but the likelihood is they were not trying to have this turn into a major incident, and they probably didn't do a full scale outbreak testing. Remember, there's a difference between what we call surveillance testing, which is just screening, people when no one's outbreaking, and just trying to see if anybody's out there. But once an outbreak occurs, then typically you should be doing the broad scale testing, especially like on a cruise ship. How do you know if someone passed someone in the line of the buffet, or if they were walking, somewhere on the deck of a ship, because everybody cruises everywhere, or was that at one of the entertainment events? I mean, if they did it the right way, they would have shut down the ship and everybody would have been tested, right? And then they would have been tested 2 days later, and then tested 3 days after that, and everybody would have been confined to their cabins. I'm sure they didn't do that. That was they had to do that back in the 2020 outbreak time, but yeah, didn't happen, I would assume.
Yeah, well, the show must go on, right? You'd have a mutiny on the ship if you told everybody go to your little rooms and you cannot come out. Can you imagine? Oh my gosh! So I think they did what they did, and it contributed to the spread. Um, the good thing, Doc, and again, without sounding like I'm minimizing the virus, the good news is that, and it's a double-edged sword, because we know that the severe illness is significantly decreased if you're vaccinated and boosted. So,
Yes.
but what we don't know and what we won't know for quite a while is the long-term effects of COVID. And I think that's kind of what sticks in my mind whenever I hear that terminology used. Well, if you're vaccinated and boosted, the chance of severe illness, hospitalization, or death is dramatically reduced. Well, that's true. But what I'm not hearing a lot of discussion, except a few episodes on our show, we've actually spoken about long COVID. That is real, and it's something that we must all pay attention to.
Yeah. It's very real. Yeah, long COVID is very real. We just keep getting more and more and more data out on it, and we're getting more and more percentages of people that are suffering from long COVID. And we're also getting to see that you don't have to be hospitalized to get long COVID, right? And so it's very serious, no doubt about it. It's very serious, and I don't know if because I'm on the show enough. I don't know if I talked about this, but one interesting thing was there was an autopsy study on people who had loss of taste and smell, and then people who had died subsequently. And what they found is that the majority of all the people had microvascular changes. So that's an important clue, that basically shows that the inflammation and blockage and destruction of the microvascular vessels throughout the body is probably one of the big etiologies of some of the other symptoms that we're seeing, and it makes sense. And then the question is that from the surge of our own immune system attacking us, but that's kind of an interesting thing. It wasn't, and just to try to explain this to everybody why this is important to doctors who have been fighting this, it didn't show that the virus had entered the cells and the nerve cell, and the virus itself had then started to chew away the nerve cell. It showed that the blood vessels around that surrounding area were destroyed at the microscopic level leading up to that nerve, which led to the loss of taste and smell. And now we've known that very well, because remember, with COVID, you get amputations, you get stroke, you get heart attacks, etc. And that's also proves why at times we see that anticoagulation, right away. One of the standards that happens anytime you're admitted to the hospital, and even, people on an outpatient basis, if you have risk and you have mild COVID, you should start some form of blood thinner, at least a daily aspirin would be a recommendation, because the aggressive clotting associated with this is very key. Another study I'll highlight that was just released, just released today, I believe, and that is a study that basically talked about the, we always have this comparison with influenza. Oh no, it's just flu. No, and it talked directly about the death rate from people who are hospitalized requiring oxygen and hospitalized requiring oxygen with flu. Because you try to do comparisons, and when you get the crazies out there that are trying to just take data and manipulate it to say something different, they twist it and manipulate it and say CC. So this is a very good apples to apples comparison. You're sick enough, you got to be in the hospital, you got to be in oxygen, you got the flu or you got COVID, 4 times higher risk of death. So pretty straightforward. But
yeah. And I think that's a lot of people were saying that for a long time, but now, the benefits with time, the longer this thing goes on, the more we learn, and that just says a lot right there. This is not like the flu.
Yeah, definitely not. Hey, another biggie. I just highlight all the important studies. We had another breakthrough today for treatment, remdesivir, which has been approved for adults, has been approved now for infants, and I'll have to look at the exact date. I think it's 27 days old and have to be above like 7 pounds. I'll get the exact weight and dates, but for the very first time, we have a treatment for infants if they come down with COVID. Now, obviously, they should be probably, moderately ill with some risk, but to have one of the well-known and studied treatments has been very effective for people in hospitalized to be down to the infant age is a positive thing. So, I just saw that from Mara. No, children and adolescents. What I'm saying, it's 27 days up. So basically, it's now approved for for pretty much across the board for children, for infants, all the way up to children and adolescents, which is a nice thing to have, because losing a child at any age is not acceptable from this. And another biggie today, boy, Monday, all the big stories. We've had a major failure. You've heard it on this show. This show, you guys literally at a national level with the effectiveness of the quality of the people and data that is presented at this show, I'll tell you. God, I lost my thought here a second. I'm reading as we go.
I know how, bro. That's why I got to be real careful.
I know it's really hard because the other thing that's so cool is because the viewers are so freaking smart that I'm reading this stuff and I'm going, wow, ooh, wow, boy, how did they know that? That's really good. Yeah, I don't know. It will come to me, Mel. I'm sorry. It's been a long Monday, but I have tons. Oh, there's Dr. Akiona off the road. She got off the road.
Yeah, I'm glad you drove safely. I'm glad you drove safely. And yeah, we had Dr. Miscovich carrying the load while you were gone. I was waiting for you to come on because I did want to show you something. We have fans all over the country. In fact, in some other countries as well, but majority of our villagers are here in the United States. But just to show you how, I'm gonna show you this that popped up on my Twitter feed today. I'm gonna make this guy famous tonight. James Young DIY. I'm assuming that's doityourselfliberty.org. So, he took it upon himself. Apparently he follows me on Twitter, I guess. I don't know. I don't, like I said, until they get personal, I don't block them. I feel good when I know I've reached across the continent to some jackass who feels the need to go and discredit some good people. So he posted this today. He shared my Twitter post, which was our show for tonight. And then he puts in this cute little comment. COVIDians, which that would mean you two and me, and Charlie. COVIDians hurting COVIDians, which means the villagers. So this jackrabbit and decides that he's going to call us COVIDians and our villagers COVIDians. So I said, okay, let's check out this guy a little bit. Okay, you can tell already the U.S. political, electoral, and party systems is rigged against the 99%. So you already know this guy's a lunatic. But he's from Marmot, West Virginia. So initially, when I saw him on my feed, I looked, okay, Young sounded like possibly a local name, and he looks actually like he could be from Hawaii. But when you look at Marmot, West Virginia, and he feels the need to go ahead and just because he's a DIYliberty.org member, that he can go and call our guests COVIDians and our villagers COVIDians. So I hope he's watching. I don't know if he's watching. I've never seen his name on our show, but he's a coward anyway, so he probably uses somebody else's Facebook account. And I cannot wait to see what he tweets about me tomorrow. But this is the kind of people that are out there continuously telling people that the information is fake, that COVID is fake, and that we are, a bunch of COVIDians that are hurting COVIDians. I just wanted to share that with the two of you tonight because he's targeting you two. He's calling you folks COVIDians, and he's calling our villagers COVIDians. How's that?
The Princess Bride. The Princess Bride, they're like my favorite. So when Inigo Montoya, he says, that word you're using, I don't think it means what you think it means. That's all I thought about.
Yeah.
So
well, I do take it personal, not for me and Charlie. I mean, whatever. I'm proud to be a COVIDian. I really am. But I really get pissed off when they call our villagers and our guests names. Obviously, right? We want to protect our villagers, want to protect our guests for sure. Um, but yeah, there's no shortage of these clowns out there that just feel the need to gotta type something. There's a lot of Facebook pages. There's a lot of Twitter feeds. There's a lot of social media people that I do not follow. But every so often, one of these people's posts or tweets will be shared, and it pops up on my feed, and I read it, and the last thing on my mind is to engage with someone like that. Why would I discredit anyone on their post, on their feed? Let them. They have their page. They have their followers. They each have their villagers. Let them go. Go play with those guys. But this guy took it upon himself to actually go in and shoot the first arrow. So,
well, wait a second, Mel. Wait. Everyone is an American, right?
mm-hmm.
And I just, while you were talking, went on and Googled Marmot, West Virginia. Okay, so I think it's very clear why Mr. Young has nothing better to do but to do those kind of things.
I was going to say a West Virginia thing, but
because he lives in Marmot, West Virginia. Just if you want to get a little bit of a look, just look at Marmot. I don't think there's a whole lot more to do there than to sit there and try to find people to complain about in Hawaii. So yeah, I mean, they got a lot of marmots running around there, and
their population is 1,503.
Yep. Yeah. They do have a Wendy's and a Taco Bell, though. So yeah. So and at least 4 of them are not married to their cousins. So just that's all I can say.
Yeah. Well, James Young, I hope you're watching, buddy. I hope you're watching, man. Go enjoy your marmots over there. I don't know what the heck.
Hey, I did remember what I was talking about, and what I did remember was that finally the CDC and Washington came out and said, "Oh, we promised this to you like 6 months ago, but we're finally going to get Paxlovid available for everybody. We're going to get it in pharmacies, and it's like a better late than never, because we've been waiting for it to be broadly available instead of having to be begging hospitals to find it and to go through hoops to get it. So that is something I bring up because I want the listeners to and viewers to understand that because I was asked this, I was on a radio show earlier, what is it about meds? And I said, there's a lot of different things people are trying to make, but I would recommend you look for and listen to one name, and it's Paxlovid. Paxlovid is a pill made by Pfizer. It should be taken within 5 days of the onset of your symptoms, and does have a few caveats where you might have to hold medicine or stop medicine. Some people may not be qualified, but you need your doctor, not the pharmacist, to be prescribing it to you because they need to know your health history and things like that. But Paxlovid is supposed to be available a little more. And so anybody who gets COVID should be considering soon to be getting on a prescription of Paxlovid. 90% reduction in hospitalization and death. So much better.
I know we have it here in limited supply on Kauai.
Well, and the frustrating part was it was kind of a feedback cycle. So they were like, "Oh, we didn't increase the supply because nobody was using it, and nobody was using it because nobody could access it." And so then it was, I think Dr. Dworkin helped with part of that feedback cycle by making it essentially it had to be easier for the doctors to get to. The pharmacists were, it was limited, and there's so many. It's 2 types of antivirals mixed together, and a lot of people who did HIV work are familiar with these, but there's a lot of drug interactions, and so that causes a lot of pharmacists to kind of be worried because they don't often know people's medical history, but for doctors, it's not as much of an issue. And so, yeah, at least at North Hawaii, they made it a little bit easier so that there's a really quick, easy referral situation where your diagnosis is confirmed. We review your medical history. We fax over your medication list. For most of mine, they're young and they don't have any medications. I say no medications, no history of renal or liver damage, no known chronic issues, and then I fax it over to KTA, and they're getting it pretty quickly. So it's what we're hoping is this is going to be a positive feedback now. So the more people pick up, then they'll increase the supply, because we always knew we needed more than what we were being given, but it was that.
Let me comment, because I'm reading the comments of some of our star villagers, George and Heidi, and now Mara and Scotty. I mean, we got the whole crew on here. That's just up on the board on the right. And the question is, George said, did we recommend pumping Paxlovid? Yeah, I mean, at this stage, George, what we're anticipating is Paxlovid is probably going to be moving into a position just like we use Tamiflu, because when you have influenza, I mean, just hands down, one of the issues, okay, and here's the answer to this question as a whole. So say you're day 2 and you got, oh no, I got COVID, and you're, not terribly, if you're high risk, it's a hands down. If you're medium risk, it's hands down. But if you're like unknown risk, well, I feel good, I'm 45, or I'm a 38-year-old and I'm working a lot, or I'm busy and I have family and I have kids, but I feel okay, I've got a couple extra pounds. The answer is, if there's no risk and there's no cost, take it. As a doctor, if you come into us and you're a day 2, I could look at you and say, well, you're healthy, you probably might, but none of us have the crystal ball. We can use the data that we know to say, well, statistically, the risk of you getting really bad in 3 days is low, but you're not a statistic when you walk in to see us. You are a person, you are a patient. And so from my perspective, if someone comes in and they're saying, I have COVID, yes, get Paxlovid. Ask for it and get it. Mara was like, what do we do if you've come through? You're only going to get 1 dose and 1 round of it. That's it. You're not going to get a second round or a continuation. So, yeah. So it's just something that, as we've talked about this before, as we move forward, one of the advantages of where we are, as long as we do not have a variant that becomes Paxlovid or medication resistant, it's going to be, it's death should be like so rare. Yes, Janelle, it is a pill. It's twice a day pill you take for 5 days. And so if our country and our federal government had their act together 5-6 months ago, we basically would have probably saved at least 50 to 100,000 lives if we would have been effectively having Paxlovid in the hands across the country like it was supposed to happen. But otherwise, we dillied around. We really dillied around poorly in our state of Hawaii with it. It was just basically sent to like a few of the hospitals and some of the community health centers. And I raised some concern. Here's a great note. I was originally on the thread with the Hawaii Healthcare Association, a hospital lobbying group. They were given control of it. And originally, we were allowed to get the medication ourselves, not the pills, but we were allowed to get monoclonal antibodies, Regeneron. And then the federal government said, too many states are asking for it. We need to have each state distribute it. Well, our state decided to have it distributed to the hospital association. And I was like, and I said, okay, I'm working in states across the country, and we're the only one that's doing it this way. There needs to be a way for this to be in the hands of other. So, and there needs to be a broad distribution in a way. And I gave them recommendations that Arizona, for example, had a great policy for it, that basically they had online a 2-page form that any doctor in the state could fill out, that you had to verify my patient has this risk, this risk, this risk, this age, and then you attached one copy of like 2 pages of a medical record summary, and it had to go in, and they had regional pharmacies that had the medicine. So by doing it that way, any doctor in the state could log on, fill out the forms immediately, and have it available, right? Guess what they did? They blocked me from the website and wouldn't allow me to communicate. They stopped sending me information, and they didn't allow me because I sent this out to everybody. So yeah. And yes, Scotty, 50,000. I'm probably underestimating. It's got to be probably 100,000. And that was from it started to become more broadly available in December, right as Omicron was really starting to peak. So we need a broad educational effort for people and doctors to know how to use it.
Yep. And actually so I've been getting kind of bit by bit, different groups are asking questions like similar to, there was a question about who we consider high risk. And so, they were talking about the second round of vaccines for one, like, are you vaccinating high risk people? And then a bunch of other people asked me about like Paxlovid and who I consider high risk. And so a lot of what we're doing currently is with the frontline workers, the essential workers. And I told them, yeah, absolutely, we're doing it. And they said, oh, because it's not in our standing orders. And, so I think the difficulty is that that's the benefit of that, or that's kind of the value of including the physicians. And so part of it is a lot more of the docs have to get educated on it, because these questions are often coming usually from pharmacists or from, kind of like non-MDs. And so they're asking, how would we rate the standing order? And I tell them, actually, I wouldn't rate it as a standing order, because it shouldn't be a checkbox. Like, it's not a simple, like, oh yeah, I told them essentially because, because of our situation. So, I think one of the questions Mara asked was how do lay people find out about divert status? That's not something that you're commonly allowed to know about. But we know that the limit, the medical beds, all of the resources didn't increase. So we're all kind of high risk. And then these frontline workers. And so, I've been getting a lot more positive COVID in food handlers, which is worrisome. And they're symptomatic. They're not feeling so good. And so, I consider them high risk. Are they very old? No, but they have high risk exposures. And a lot of their household often are essential workers as well. So they're also in the, housekeeping, and they're in different. So, it's hard, because a lot of it comes down to kind of what we know clinically. And it's not necessarily a checkbox. There's not going to be as simple as, oh, you're, it cannot be something that's as simple as, like a checkbox that we can just hand to people. But a lot of us actually are high risk, mostly because if we were to develop moderately or severe, COVID, the resources just aren't there to support a lot of us in the rural areas.
I'm gonna. What I want to try and do is try to get through some of these questions.
I did see that one earlier.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to scroll as you guys answer. I'm gonna try to scroll to the next one. Just to. It's like yeah, I don't know what you call it. Yeah, we're gonna bombard you guys with questions just because. So here's the first one.
Yeah, I can talk about that one, and I'll give everybody a reference point. I think the villagers know I'm on CNN on a regular basis and have been. 106th time was my last time. And I have my own producers, and I'm tied in with, I'm mostly international, and I'm tied in with the data and international. And one of the stories they were asking me, and I share data with them, and we share it back and forth as we talk about what stories. And one of the data points, which I think the group will find really interesting, we were going to have as a story on CNN, and I think they decided to hold it, was that the World Health Organization came out and basically, this is about a week ago or 10 days ago, and they basically said that they feel the worldwide mortality from COVID is 15 million. Not 6 million. right? And that basically the WHO was basically getting pushback from different countries, especially one of the big ones was India, because the WHO was highlighting the underreporting across the world. And India, it is believed that the death rate per them is at least 3 times higher. And then I went through and gave some of the data that I have from some of our studies and some of the other colleagues, since I'm dealing internationally with this. And we highlighted locations where we know for a fact that the death rates have been hidden. And I think anybody in the planet who thinks that 17 people have died in China is like, yeah, right, give me a break. So for a fact that they have underreported. I had literally patients who I trusted like for years, who had family members that were basically doing almost like the death carts, picking up bodies in Wuhan, when Wuhan broke out over there. And they were talking that the number of deaths, that they couldn't even count it. It was staggering. And, I think we would understand that. Then the other place that we would have is Argentina is believed to have a significant number of deaths, where, 5 times where they basically are just burning bodies. Sub-Saharan Africa, anybody who has been to Nairobi or to some of the big cities in Sub-Saharan Africa, it is just like, if you can imagine 10 million people in shanties, like just on top of each other. We know what happens with this disease. They were just basically burying people and burning them. So way back when, at one point, if I ever get bored, I want to go back and look at all of our shows and some of my TV time. We were predicting with some of the expert group I had that the worldwide mortality, and this is in 2020, was going to exceed 20 million. And that was taking the data, that was taking contagious, that was taking broad data from, epidemiologically. And now I think we've pushed that even higher to 30 million because there's not going to be, an ability to count. And so it's a long, long story around the question on the screen. And the answer is, when you have, there are some early studies. When I was making those early decisions to begin all the broad testing, and I was studying what was going on across the world to do testing, one of the things I was doing, and I was studying population density, and I was taking outbreak spread and data from what the density of the populations were in relationship to the spread. Major correlation. You don't have to be an epidemiologist to do that. Clearly, with the density of the population in China, they've had massive outbreak and spread, and also they don't live in big, massive homes where they have, 4 people living in 4 bedrooms. People get in and, they're tied together. So it's a long story to say that zero COVID, as we've also seen in New Zealand and Australia, are another perfect example of, tried to do zero COVID, doesn't work. American Samoa just had their big outbreak, doesn't work. So, yeah, guess what works?
It only takes one.
Yeah. Vaccines work. That's it. So,
which home COVID test works best now? There's a ton of them. There are a ton of them now. Any in particular, or are they pretty much all?
You pointed out that I think FlowFlex actually does a little bit better with the Omicron, but that, I think usually with these kind of questions, I try to just reassure people that the ones that the general common ones you have access to are okay, as long as you take the sample correctly and you follow the directions, because even the best COVID test is going to be wrong if you don't collect the sample well and you don't follow the directions. So,
okay. Meredith, let me answer that question. then, and I did this on the radio show today too, the most important thing, this is like failure number 2 from the federal government and state governments across the country. Home tests, how should they be used? Number 1, symptomatic. A home test is accurate if you have symptoms. So if you have symptoms, most of the home tests are going to go above the 80% sensitivity, okay? But a lot of people do home tests when they're asymptomatic. That is a 50-50 shot at best, all right? So that's not when they're supposed to be used. Now, why do they come in packs of 2? Because you can use them if you're asymptomatic, but they are validated for 48-hour intervals. So you use one when you're asymptomatic, and you use the second one 48 hours later. If you are negative on 2 consecutive tests in a 48-hour period, you're going to get back up into the 80% range. So that's how you need to use the home test, and that's what we're talking about. That most of them will group. Most of them will be reasonable if you get a good sample that you're collected, if you do it like that. I'm not a fan of the eye health, which the government sends out. FlowFlex is pretty good. And then the 3 big manufacturers, Abbott, Quidel, and BD, are all good. And then other than that, you're going to have all kind of scrappy ones that are all people just entering the market. Stay away. I'd stay with those 4 if you can.
Not a question, but a good point from Melissa. And that's your homework assignment tonight. Have a copy of your medication list just in case the facility doesn't have access. Because of the drug interaction issue with Paxlovid and any medication, that you should always have, put in your wallet, put in your purse, because you may be traveling, you may be unconscious, you know, God forbid. But if you're traveling, you're in another state, and you know, a lot of us have our medical thing on an app, My Heart, whatever, not My Heart, what is it called? My Health. So everything is on there. But if you're not able to access it, or you're in a new jurisdiction that they don't know who the heck you are, have that list handy. Thank you for that, Melissa. That's
hey,
and chime in, Doc. Chime in.
Oh, I want to chime in because, you know, Dwayne Cox just put up, I think, a great question. I'd love to hear everybody's view of this one. I'd love to have this one at Dr. Akiona, everybody, and Mel and everybody. Is said, is there any positives from all these tragic deaths? Are we learning anything medically? I'm going to make predictions, which are easy predictions. Biggest positive that's going to come from this is understanding the mRNA technology, and mRNA technology is going to be able to be broadened into so many things. It's going to go into cancers. It's going to go into other infectious disease, other vaccinations. It's going to be something that is just going to continue to show advancements. And so mRNA technology is number 1. Number 2 is preparedness for future pandemics and future outbreaks. I think it's not guaranteed, but I think inevitably we are going to be way more prepared, and we will be far more prepared if our government really does the right thing and the states do the right thing. And that will also include being less dependent on other countries to do things if a pandemic comes on, because we have to be self-sufficient, especially here in Hawaii. We need to learn that. And from the disease itself, we've said this again and again, Dwayne and everyone, we are going to be studying this disease for generations to come. It is so incredible. It is nothing like healthcare has ever seen. We have little bits and pieces, but to put it all together, it is just going to be something that we're going to be studying again and again and again. It's probably going to be opening up some avenues in understanding more virology for specific viruses and the way they develop. And it's probably going to ultimately, one of the big breakthroughs that we're still looking for is how to work with this massive immune surge that we know is the heart of what kills people. So we're going to find this cascade of this crazy immune surge that has led to the majority of the deaths, and eventually somebody's going to come up with something quickly, probably within the next year, I'm guessing, that's going to be able to stop that inflammatory response. And inflammation in healthcare, if left untreated, and if progressing on its own accord, is a problem in many different diseases. So I'll stop at that. I could babble. What do you think, Dr. Akiona?
Positives. I think the silver lining parts of things is when bad things happen, it brings attention to sometimes it brings attention to the obvious stuff that maybe as primary care people we knew about. So a lot of the care, the pukas, so the weak spots in our I know it's a weird thing, but I think it really emphasizes some of the improvements that can be made. And the reason why it's a positive is because then I think it makes everybody rally around, certain populations, around certain things. Like, there definitely is a bigger booth, just a bunch of people who are really, really kind of promoting health literacy, for example. So health literacy, in a lot of ways, is kind of an entry point. It's one of those important gateway. It's almost like it's a gateway to the rest of your health. And so, if you can understand what needs to happen, if you can formulate questions, know what kind of questions to ask, and they're being, people are being taught how to advocate for themselves, your health gets better. I think, one of the most important things I kept on saying to the community here is when you're educated better, your health is better. So that's one good thing. I think that because there was a lot of emphasis shown, on just all of the vulnerabilities in our healthcare system, a lot of organizations are now focusing on making sure that we're health literate, not just about COVID, but about, all the chronic diseases too, all of the things that increased our risk for bad outcomes. The other part is that I think, even though it doesn't seem like it doesn't feel like there's a lot of accountability, and I think a lot more people on different levels, patients to physicians to family members and survivors, are more aware of what needs to happen for good care, and that only helps doctors like me and Dr. Miscovich, because especially in Hawaii, I think that people didn't realize how much we were missing out on, or how it could have been better. And so that's a positive for me on the bigger picture. I think I find a lot more like Marshallese, a lot more Pacific Islanders, a lot more Hawaiians advocating for themselves. Sometimes it's not in the right direction, like a couple of my hardhead Hawaiians that are we're anti-vax, but that's okay, because it's baby steps where they're learning how to, that's part of the health literacy process. So it's nice to see a lot more people engaged in that. The rest of it, as a science nerd, I mean, there's just been amazing a lot of interesting kind of connections being made, because initially it was kind of a mystery, and then when we realized it was like this massive inflammatory just responses, and then kind of the fallout from that, there's just so many different directions that we went with in terms of treatment, and then the long COVID stuff, and then what happens after we've been exposed, and all of the immunologic stuff. So I think there actually is a lot of positives in that we very quickly learned a lot, and we're not POW. But I think from the social side of it, it emphasized a lot of things to the point where you couldn't ignore it. And so, it gave some of those organizations that are really interested in helping fix something, issues to hold on to. And at least in Hawaii County, I know that they invested a couple million into just making sure health literacy is addressed. And I think, overall, in all aspects of medicine, that's going to help us move forward.
There's a couple questions that are really good. Like, for example, I'd like to answer Dwayne's and then go back and answer one of the other questions that asked me if do I still not think we're going to see a big surge. I said that on my CNN time. I want to highlight, I don't think we're going to see a surge of death and hospitalizations like we have seen because of the information we have, or because of the meds we have now, and because of well, we know about BA2. You know, BA2 is a little more contagious, but it still is a variant of Omicron. And at this stage, we take the data that we had in Europe and we translate it through. We are seeing the surges already starting throughout the United States. It's just that you're not getting great data anymore. I mean, it's just kind of downplayed. And I had a great map that I saw where what it did, it took the old version of what we reported in with CDC and how you had red, yellow, and green for risk, and then it had the new version. And it was like effective as of Friday. And you put those two things up, and the old version, it's red all over the place and yellow, and there's barely any green because we have numbers that are doubling and the positivity rates are going up across the country, et cetera, as BA2 is going across. And then you put the new CDC map up and it's all happy and everything's good because they only base it on hospitalizations. So the bottom line is we do have a surge that's going on across the country, but we are not seeing the hospitalizations in all areas. Some areas are starting to have big pickups, and we're not seeing deaths. And that's what I said on CNN, and that's what the data shows. And that's where we extrapolate the European data and bring it across, is that as long as we continue with what is the BA2 or even BA3, 4, or 5, they're all just variations, we're not going to see surges. I qualified it and said, if we see a new variant that is completely different with a new spike, all bets are off. We don't know. It depends on the variant. But at this stage, you know, we're predicting that, I don't know, what is it today? It's the 25th. You know, I think that, you know, by June, you know, mid-June, we should be through this spike, right? You know, that's going to occur mostly across the country. And there's no easy way to know 100% about that, but most data points would take us there. And then who knows? After that, it all depends on what happens in the Southern Hemisphere winter, where all the variants are usually formed, and if there's a new variant and what happens from there. So we don't know.
And you said you had one for Dwayne?
Oh yeah, Dwayne asked, like, well, who's going to put all this together? We talked about, his question was, well, what's the positives, and then who's going to lead it? And I think that as I'm reading a lot of the really well educated villagers, who knows is the answer. You know, it's the right question to ask, Dwayne. It really should be led by the federal government. This, you know, what should be going on right now is the federal government should be already starting to study and learn, not to punish, but study and learn. And every state should be doing a massive blow by blow look at what can we learn. But why, Dwayne and villagers, and I've said this so many times, are we failing and will we fail? Because it's an election year. No one's going to talk about trying to say bad. Everybody's now getting all their pictures and all doing their positive stuff, asking for your vote. And then after that, the last thing they all want to do then is go back and show where they failed. So good luck.
Yeah, that unfortunately, that's, I think, the case. Doc, I don't know if you can see Selena's question. It's too large. It won't fit on the screen. So I'll read it. And it says, what about someone who was exposed to a positive household member and was symptomatic 7 days after the exposure, been symptomatic for 7 weeks, but has tested negative on multiple home and PCR tests and is not getting better? Been to the doctor several times. They first said walking pneumonia, but now just treating his asthma. 7 weeks and symptoms are not getting any better. Let me just answer it in the layperson way. get another doctor.
Mhm.
Antibody test.
Yeah, find another doctor, man.
Antibodies.
That's my non-medical opinion.
Yeah,
Right,
Dr. Akiona gave the answer right there. Is one of the things our brains would ask for right away.
Yeah, antibody
Well,
tests would let us know if you had the infection, even if your PCRs were negative, and maybe, I mean, if it's multiple, less likely that you were, it was one bad sample. But I mean, if you had the infection, we just never caught it, you would probably still have some, antibodies in your blood, and then just, acknowledging that it's not everything is COVID. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you definitely can. I've been seeing more. There's been flu A on island lately, and there's been a couple of really bad stomach flus, so that were consistently COVID negative. But yeah, I would start with antibodies.
Yeah, does everybody understand that? And I totally 100% agree, is that if you would come to us and you were presenting the same way, and of course we're going to qualify, we would really need to know the whole history, look at the test, where they were done, how they were done. There's a lot of questions, but as a generality, if you got a high quality antibody test from like clinical labs, which is really, really well done, and that came out negative, and you had negative PCRs and home tests, you didn't have COVID, right? That's pretty much closes the door on that, and you have something else. So
I want to put this one up because this is from Mara, but I want to make sure. I'm not sure what she means, but it says CVS does not have tests sensitive enough to distinguish from vaccines or from virus. Now, the vaccine will never ever trigger a positive COVID test, correct?
correct.
Okay, so
And CVS,
because I hear this, I don't hear it anymore because no one's really taking vaccines. There very few people are out, lining up for vaccines like they did because everybody's got them and they feel it's safe enough now. They don't have to go get a booster. But I've heard in the past where people said, if you get the vaccine, don't go take a COVID test because it's too soon because it's going to test you positive. But unlike, and I hate to get into the whole technical explanation of the mRNA and all of that, but you're not getting the virus, correct? In the vaccine.
No, that's myth. That's myth.
Yeah.
The vaccine will not cause you to have any change in any test. They do totally different things. They're detecting totally different things. Total myth. Zero chance.
And Mara asked about the tests. I mean, so your doctor, like, it's not exclusive to Dr. Miscovich or me. It's if you want to, so I know as a doctor, I hate being bullied into like ordering something if I don't know what I'm doing, or but it's a clinical labs and a diagnostic, both clinical and diagnostic, they have this test. And the doctors, I was looking because I usually carry a printed form because people have been asking for it. I'll look for it and I can comment on it, but because it's just a, there's a laundry list of tests that we can order from them, and there's one specific one for if you had the virus, and there's one specific one for the when you've gotten your vaccines, and they're cash pay for almost everybody. There's a few people that we were able to get it covered by the insurance because they're immune suppressed, but $40, and it's
$40.
Yeah, and that's the price across the board. They don't raise it, and you just pay cash, and it's a blood draw. It's not something that you would go to CVS and pick up something.
Let me answer the question for everybody, because now I see what the mixture, the mess up is here. All right, when you get that $40 test, you are getting 2 antibodies for that price. One is the spike protein antibody. That is basically what the vaccine is addressing. It's specifically addressing the spike on the top because that's where it sticks. That's why we say when people say, oh, this vaccine's going to attack me and all over. No, man, this thing is like targeting in on the spike at the top. Now, the other is basically targeting the round ball or the protein structure, which is the lattice and infrastructure of the protein of that round ball. That's why they're totally different. And you'll get numbers for each one of those, and you'll get quantitative numbers for the spike, and then the other one will be you had it or you didn't.
No, I don't. She clarified her comment, and it obviously exactly what you're talking about, the antibodies. I'm not sure. I know on Kauai you cannot get a antibody or a titer test at a CVS. I'm not sure if you can do that on Oahu or where else, but I know that it's not available here on Kauai. So it's awesome if you can get that at a pharmacy on Oahu. Here, let's just end with this question here because our time is up, and I know I just want to hear. Oh, where did it go? This is an old question, but it's you still got a lot of people that are flying. A lot of people that are flying without masks. The debate has always been how safe. We had Doctors Tim Brown and Leo Altenberg on. We had a discussion about, Dr. Brown, I believe it was Dr. Brown, put up the chart on the studies of how transmission in aircrafts occur. It's quite telling that the graphics or the studies that he had referenced. But right now, as it stands, how safe is it to fly?
Okay, I think that well, this is how I view my role as a doctor. Someone asked me a question, I don't throw and answer the question with 6 more questions. I try to be succinct and give them enough information to know what my recommendation stems from. Tim and I communicate daily, and we actually shared a study. There was a great study that came out of a really well-known doctor from Canada who was actually being advised to go to she was being awarded like the National Science Award, this really, really high award in epidemiology. And one of the questions was, she was like, should I fly or not? And she was put all the data together, and she ended up not flying. But it was, again, a really great summary of the flying data. And, Tim is a master. Tim is just amazing. Anybody who sees what Tim gives, please trust him. He's incredible. But the bottom line was 2 rows in front, 2 to 3 rows in front. If you're the ground zero patient, you have a higher chance of infecting 2 or 3 rows in front, and a couple rows behind you and the sides. That is ground zero for it. So then so if you're sitting without a mask and everybody's without a mask and you were within that range, then the other thing is, which makes a lot of sense, is duration of flight. No brainer. The longer the flight, the higher chances you're going to get infected on the flight. And then finally, then there are data talking about, we've said it a million times on this show, a good fitting N95, right? You wear a good fitting N95, you're great, man. That's what we wear in intensive care units, or we wear, when we're testing patients and things like that. So if you have a good fitting N95, and I know you guys have heard me say this when I was traveling all over the country and I was wigging out all over the country, I would basically make sure I ate before I got on the plane, and I would get 1 bottle of water, slide my mask over, chug my bottle of water down, put my mask on, and that's the only time my mask budged from my face the entire time when I was on that plane. So the bottom line is, don't just sit there and take your mask off and lounge on food or something. Airplane food's pretty bad anyways. Just wear your mask. So that's my answer. If you wear a really well-fitted N95 and you don't take your mask off, you're really in pretty good shape.
Awesome. Someone asked about this, if the study that Dr. Brown referenced, was it Greek Delta? I believe it was. So yeah, it was a while ago. And I think the purpose of that was to show that the filtration system in airplanes are not as safe as these airlines are telling you. They're basically saying it's safer to be in an airplane without a mask than being in a restaurant. And that's horse crap. I mean, that's horse crap. But again, like the doc says, wearing a mask, just be as safe as you can be, and that's obviously the way to go. Now, someone's asking about it wasn't Dr. Miscovich's study, it was Dr. Tim Brown.
Mm-hmm.
So go check out our show last week.
Last Wednesday.
Go ahead and watch the last week's episode. You can go to my YouTube channel. All the episodes are there. It's easier than trying to track it down on Facebook.
And then there's
go to my YouTube channel. And you can watch it, and you can get the study on the show.
Mel, I just sent you a link to the study, to all the cumulative studies too. If you wanted to post that, you could do that.
Okay.
And I like this guy. There's a Professor Jose Luis Jimenez. So I don't know. He's on my page. I posted his Twitter feed because he's hilarious. I love it because he travels with the CO2 monitor, and he shows you the readings from different places, and he tells you like, okay, so here I am, in the different spots. So on waiting in the security line, and so like it was kind of nice to see real quantitative data as he moved through going on an international flight. So that there's one. He cites a couple of studies as well, but he's a professor. He focuses more on ventilation. But I liked his whole thread because it literally, like, you can follow him through Munich airport. I think at the departure gate, seeing when they're taxiing, and actually that was when things were worse. Was when they were taxiing and landing, and right when they're boarding, you're kind of the closest around with each other. And this is kind of when you're considering, you're wearing your mask. I know in Europe it was a lot more I was seeing a lot more masks than my friends' pictures of their planes when the Florida judge overturned the mask mandates. So that was kind of disappointing. I saw that Scotty. Did you see that Scotty asked if either of us got it? No, I think it was Scotty. I didn't yet.
Okay.
I am COVID negative. I've got COVID antibodies to prove I did not have it because I'm around it. I've been around it so much. I basically did go get the antibodies, and I'm off the scale with my COVID vaccination antibodies, and I am 0. So was my wife. We both got it. So, yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. No. Well, what was his cutoff when he was using it? Was he using CO2? What was his cutoff data point?
So no, he was just monitoring. So he was showing you all the readings from
what reading is he showing? What kind of monitor and what kind of reading?
Oh, CO2 parts per million, or ppm. Okay. Yeah, it's a CO2 parts per million.
And did he give his cutoffs? Because I've studied this extensively, and I have data that I use, and so yeah. Yeah, because then he does, and he kind of tells you what the numbers are, and then what are his numbers? What's he what kind of numbers is he showing?
So he's showing 900s, 800s. Yeah. 597 was where terminal ventilation, despite crowding, and then they got 932 on Lufthansa. Yeah, right. 1475.
That's starting to crank up there. You get above 50,
so that was as boarding was progressing, and it was
there we are. That's
boarding,
very accurate.
It went up. Yeah. So from when he got on 932, 1475, 1596 was the peak, and then going lower. So when he got off and sitting at the gate, 610, 698 at the gate, and then back on. So now they're on going to Spain, 1021, 1555, 2551 when they were taxiing.
You guys keep talking.
So yeah, it says I just like following, and then so that it was part of this talk that was given, basically saying, you know, there was early data and studies with the long haul flights, and how, you know, ventilation really mattered, and there wasn't really, they didn't have many cases that kind of just had that resulted in clusters, and this was looking at like Emirates. But then they also had another study that was showing, you know, on a pretty empty flight to Ireland, because of how Ireland was handling things at the time, just a few cases actually ended up having community spread. And so it really mattered, one, like what people were doing on the plane, but it also mattered in the community as well. Once the traveler arrived, that even just 3 cases turned into kind of a problem in Ireland. So it's yeah, I think so. He brought his monitor. I was wondering when you were going to bring that out.
You were wondering when I'm going to bring this out. Did I ship one to you, right? Don't you guys? Oh, I didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. I shipped them.
I would have been carrying it everywhere, and like
I will get you one. I shipped them to all my mainland where we were doing the schools, and so okay. So here I have central air conditioning on right now, and there I don't know if you can see my number.
776.
Yeah, 776, and then temperature and percentage of oxygen and stuff like that. So, and this is a pretty good monitor, but yeah, I mean, yeah, this is $129, and it's a pretty good quality one. So, there's no reason like every freaking school shouldn't have like a couple of these around and walk into every classroom and basically be able to, because basically our cutoffs are about 1,500. If you go above 1,500, you really need to start changing your ventilation. If you're going up 3,000, danger, get out of there. But 1,500 to 2,500, as it goes up in 500 increments, your risk of not having the air moving is really, really high. So, you know, this is something that, you know, especially like these bars and restaurants and things like that, when we had the different mayors arm wrestling over what they should do or what they shouldn't do, that was one of the issues. So, and I'm now at 7:30.
How far away from one's mouth should one hold the CO2 monitor when taking a reading?
Different monitor.
It's totally different. This is doing atmospheric. So I guess I could sit here and talk into it for a while and see if it changes or not. But I'll talk into the top of my monitor. But I don't think it's that sensitive at all. So yeah, mine.
And I just saw a couple of questions and responses regarding food handlers. You know, we now know that COVID is really, you know, it's an aerosolized virus. In the beginning, we were worried that it would be on the surface of countertops for days and weeks and blah blah blah. And this will be the last question, I promise. What's the new data showing, or the most recent data? Food workers not wearing masks, coughing in the food, sneezing in the food. How big of a concern is that?
Pretty low risk. Pretty low risk. The risk of ingestion, infection is really quite low. So no, I mean, there's a bunch of other infections you could get, and that shouldn't be happening. I'm not advocating it, hell no. But the bottom line is aerosolized, breathing it in, getting those little nasty little spikes stuck up into your airways, and that's where you get it. So, hey, Muriel, the schools do have these. Are they using them? Are they broadcasting them or something? I didn't know the schools had these.
Yeah.
Yep.
Her name is Marie.
The French, maybe from France.
Ah, Marie.
Marie, yeah. She gets really upset when you call her Morel. Really,
Marie.
She probably broke her monitor right now.
I should kick myself because I literally had like 14 years of French, So I started in this special school where I started having French in second grade and took it always up through college. So I'm great at ordering in restaurants, man. Oh man.
Well, for all of you out there that have kids in school, make sure you reach out to your administration, your principal, whatever, and force them to use those doggone monitors. Find out. I mean, that's typical though for government, right? You buy them because somebody came and sold them, and somebody signed the purchase order, and then they hand them out, and it sits on the shelf. So those of you that don't have them, parents, will demand them, and make sure you got your. It's so important to keep our kids safe in schools. I'm not upset, except that Hawaii Department of Education schools are not using the CO2 monitors. That would piss me off too. Let me tell you, if I had a kid in school, that would definitely piss me off. But anyway, all right. Doggone. She said you can call her whatever. Anyway, I appreciate you guys coming on again. It's always a pleasure, and information it's just, I mean, it just seems like every show we learn something new, and because the information continues to change. So appreciate you guys. What's your final thoughts, Dr. Akiona?
Are you gonna tell I think Dwayne asked if you can tell the smell farts on the plane story. So that's my question to you. But I'm from the Big Island, so I have a bunch of people actually now asking a little bit more for the second booster. So the interest waned, and I think you guys kind of nailed it early on when people were saying, hey, is it just that is the disease like less severe, or is it just messaging? And it's a little bit of both, right? So we have a lot of people did get vaccinated. A lot of us or people had the infection, so they had some kind of protection. But part of it was, there was a pretty significant march towards everything's great. March 31st rolled around, on all the funding stopped, and everybody kind of quickly cross your fingers, and mask mandates started dropping, and everything appears like we were headed towards what we thought was going to be normal. But I think with the fatigue and everything, I'm guilty of it too. I hear what I want to hear, and I think it was nice. I think for some of especially the hotel workers, they said it was nice to take a breather, but then they realized people were still sick. There was still guests coming in testing positive. We were still quarantining significant amount of travelers on the Big Island, from Australia, from Canada, from Japan. It's happening with a lot less resources, and so you think about all of the things that's happening in travel right now, and because Europe is there's so much scary things happening that we're a much more attractive destination, so a lot more people are coming here. If that's enough to kind of get you guys, or get your family or anybody that you care about, to just wear your mask, keep on. Just be careful. Do the things that we know that we can do to protect ourselves, because it's pretty much at this point, I think we are kind of on our own, and at least masking, social distancing, and trying not to go out if we don't have to in crowds. I have to travel, so I think next month I'll be on Oahu for at premiere. So I know I have to travel, and I'm not as scared as I used to be. So if you're a part of that crowd where you guys have to travel, wearing your N95 and just like doing what Dr. Miscovich did. He traveled a lot. Like they had to go all over the place. And I mean, we practiced what we preached. So, you can stay safe, and there are ways to avoid getting sick. So yeah, I mean, people are turning the corner. I think lots of people are realizing that COVID's not going away, that we have to always be a little bit smart, and that all of those the safety videos and hygiene things that I was a server for years, and so all those things that they tell you to do, it's for more than just COVID. So I mean, like Doc was saying, coughing, low likelihood to ingest the COVID and get sick. But man, there's so many other reasons why you shouldn't cough on food, and we shouldn't go to work sick, and we really should just take it easy. So this is my plug for just being safe and reminding people that sometimes it's not COVID, and we have been having the flu around on the Big Island at least. So, if you haven't, get your flu shot. Make sure that you're washing your hands and being safe. And let's wait for the numbers on Wednesday and see where things are headed. And hopefully Uncle Mel will tell us the smelling farts on plane story.
I mean, all I said was that if the filtration system was that good in an airplane, when someone farted, you would never smell it, right? If that thing sucked it to the floor so quickly, just went right past you so damn quick that the little fart particles wouldn't even get into your nostrils. I mean, I'm not going to sit up here and say I never farted on a plane and started arguments in the row behind me because the person thought it was their spouse. Hey, it's called crop dusting, man. You just crop dust.
It's a strategy.
I mean, that's so disgusting. Hey, Dwayne, you sent those pictures to my messenger, so I don't have the ability right now because the way I'm set up. I apologize. You can. My email is real simple: melraposo@gmail.com. melraposo@gmail.com. You can send it to me there. From there, I can actually set it up, and maybe we can do it on the next show, Dwayne. Appreciate. I did see it though, and appreciate it. Yeah, so that's the fart story. Dr. Miscovich.
I don't know, what can I say after that? One addition to what Dr. Akiona said that I wanted to make sure that, since this is a really educated group, and I only want to say this to the village, you are way more educated because of the way this show has really taken great science and great facts and distilled them down. You are not getting any garbage from all the people that Mel and Charlie bring on this show. It's just a great source of education. So share it. Share it. One thing. But one of the things I do want to share, back to the question of, well, it's not that bad. These variants aren't as bad. Here's the clarification you guys need. If you never had COVID and you are not vaccinated, if you get Omicron 1 or Omicron 2, you are going to die just like anybody else. Your risk is very, very significant. Okay? So that is the difference. That's the clarification. Dr. Akiona said it coming from the other side. I'm saying it coming from this side. Second thing, so anybody who's not vaccinated, never had the disease, they have zero immunity, right? If you had like Alpha, you had one of the original variants, you have a little bit of immunity that might cover, but it's not all that much because Omicron is so much different. And there are studies that are very well done that show when you got your vaccine or when you had the disease or when you had both, to show how much protection that you have, right? The second issue, which is something that the villagers need to share, is waning immunity. It is my third point. Come on, I beat up the government for 3 points. Number one was, the failures of CDC. Number two was Paxlovid and not getting available. Well, the third point, I'm going to beat them up, that you guys need to get the gloves on this one, is 2 shots is not fully vaccinated, okay? 3 shots is as close to saying fully vaccinated, if you want to use that term. But for the government and our state to keep perpetuating that if you have 2 shots, you're fully vaccinated, that's false. 2 shots right now. New data came out, depending on which other variants you're going to be exposed to, and it's maybe 40-35%. With Omicron, it's about 20%. So if you've had 2 shots and your last shot was like a year ago or something like that, you're barely cruising with 20% protection. Okay, 20%. So spread that word. That means right now, if we're being honest to the people of Hawaii, we probably, we're cruising at about 40% of our population is fully vaccinated. That means 60% has a risk of getting COVID. Now, hospitalization and death is another story. You do carry some immunity for that, but spread the word. Spread the word. If you only have 2 shots, you shouldn't be not wearing a mask on a plane, and you shouldn't be out at all these big, grouped up concerts and events and things like that. So that's my thought. And then I'll quickly grab Heidi, since she's a regular great listener. The data is really crystal clear on what shot you should ask for. Switch it. If you had Pfizer, get Moderna. If you have Moderna, get Pfizer. There are studies that show that you get a little bit of an increased effectiveness versus continuing to get the 4th shot of the same thing. It's close. And if you've had J&J, go on and get a couple of Pfizers or a couple of Modernas. Don't rest with J&J. The data is out, and it's pretty crystal clear. It was inferior when it came to the total overall protection relative to what we're getting. So I could blabble. That's enough.
Thank you, Doc and Doc. Appreciate you guys. You got your Merry Monarch hat on. I did want to, again, congratulate Kumu Lena Ala Paval Jardine from Halau Kale Mokihana Olena Ala. Clean sweep from the Merry Monarch. That was we're so proud of her and her halau, and she's going to be our guest on Friday night. So if you guys want to hear the inside scoops, yeah, she is going to take us down that road. And I mean, I've seen it. I've seen how she trains her students. She's tough, and I guess you have to be tough. The discipline is I would quit, and I'm not a quitter. But she's tough. But that's what happens, right? They go up there and they were. Doc Akiona, I mean, you're a hula girl. I saw the video someone posted of you dancing. And what did you think of that performance? If you watch it, I'm not sure if you watch it or not. But
no, I mean it was just nice to see people, but I mean they did amazing. And so my kumu was Ed Collier, and he was usually a judge. So for a majority of my life, we didn't even get to enter those things. And then when we started, I just remember, I was thinking of all, like, we were on couple for so long. There's so many restrictions, and you just got to dedicate so much time. And I was so everybody was just so happy. It was so amazing to see everybody. And I gotta say, from the COVID side, people were pretty pretty responsible. There was a few numbnuts, but for the most part, the people because they knew they had to protect their halal. So I really appreciated that. Everybody vaccinated, people just being careful. So, but congratulations, Hawaii, man. Oof.
Yeah, that was solid. So she'll be on Friday. So hope you guys can join us, and all of you that are new to the village, make sure you tune in on Friday. I just want to say this because this is going on our 3rd year now, and we still get people who like the cartoon that we showed earlier on Twitter, and there's still others that really ignore the science, and with this show we try to bring the science. And listen, we didn't know any of our guests, any of our doctors. It's not like we were buddies in high school or college, and we're trying to bring on the people that we had no idea who any of these guys were and gals, and we brought them on because we wanted to hear the truth. We had no idea what they were going to say. We wanted to hear the truth, and we did that because we felt that the public, the people, didn't have nowhere to go. They had nowhere to go for information, and a lot of the information was just scattered all over the place. And thanks to our guests, we're able to bring the information that the people could, number one, receive, number two, receive in a manner that they could understand, not just a bunch of doctors talking on each Hawaii News Now, speaking in their language that no one understood. But and I don't say this for sympathy or whatever, but my dad's on. He lost his wife, my stepmom. I lost a first cousin. I lost 2 aunties, actually an auntie and my grand auntie, mother daughter, 1 week apart from COVID right here on Hawaii. Numerous friends, close friends. I mean, just in the recent 6 months, 3 very, very, very close, like brothers, to COVID. And I for the life of me, I cannot understand how people can continue to go on and basically say, Mel, you're full of it, man. You're overreacting, Mel. I mean, Lord have mercy. It's just like the flu. I cannot believe I'm the only one that. And doctors, you guys see it all the time. So you folks see it in your patients, in urgent care or wherever. But I cannot believe that no one, not everyone, has been touched by COVID and understand the gravity of this virus. I don't, for the life of me, can understand that. And so yeah, maybe we pound it every night we're on, and that was the intent. That was the intent. It was to be somewhat entertaining, but also to really drive home the fact that we got to take care of ourselves and take care of our loved ones. And the only way we could do that is have the right information. That's what we continue to do. Now, as we start, we'll see what happens Wednesday. We'll see what happens Wednesday with the numbers. I'm hoping, I really am hoping that the numbers will be similar to last week and that we don't see a huge spike and that we haven't seen, last week we had 17 people die in the last report. That's in 1 week, people. 17 people. It's only 17. More people die of everything else. My God, what kind of argument is that? So I hope that I hope we don't see any deaths, but I hope that the numbers are at a manageable level, and we'll see what happens. But we have beat this to death. I was talking to Charlie today. Obviously, he's working again tonight, and we're definitely gonna keep the show going on Wednesdays, and we're definitely gonna keep the shows on Fridays. We want to focus a lot more on the Feel Good Fridays, bring some happy stuff. But we're going to see what COVID does, and we'll adjust accordingly. We don't want to bore you guys 3 nights a week with the same old, but we definitely want to continue bringing the COVID information that is current. So with that, I appreciate you guys. You guys are always so great. Do me a favor, go find, what the hell was his name? James Young on Twitter. Go follow him and then go drop him a nice aloha message. Really, and I mean that. Nothing. Don't be nasty. Just go on his Twitter feed and say aloha from Hawaii, and just bombard him. And maybe he'll get a little dose of aloha. Anyway, guys, we love you guys. You guys stay safe. God bless. Good night.
Good night, everybody.